Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome and thank you to all of you for joining us today for the fifth edition of Pluxee Select. Select is Pluxee's initiative to bring to you inspiring stories of personalities from different walks of life. We at Pluxee are especially excited for this edition. I'd like to invite Mr. Harish Sarma, Marketing and Product Director, to take the session ahead and introduce our special guest for today.
Thank you, Shruti. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Pluxee Select. My name is Harish, and I head product and marketing for Pluxee in India. As you're aware, our stated objective and ambition as Pluxee is to help bring to you more of what really matters to you. In line with this ambition, we hold these monthly webinars, that bring you speakers from the areas of well-being, motivation, inspirational, people from all walks of life, etc. And uh, frequently within these webinars, we also try to bring to you accomplished personalities from different walks of life, like sports persons, CEOs. We've had a mental conditioning coach coming and speaking to you. In this line, it's our great honor to bring to you our guest for today, who's worn multiple hats in her illustrious career. In her different avatars, we have seen her as a trailblazing supermodel, a renowned actress, a passionate advocate for social causes, and of course, a humanitarian worker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our guest for today, Lisa Ray. While she needs no introduction, it's still my job to outline a few of her achievements, from groundbreaking roles in Indian cinema to her unwavering advocacy for cancer awareness. Lisa has consistently made a profound impact on all of us around her. So as an introduction, we have a short video that Lisa was kind enough to share with us. We'd like to play that for you, which beautifully encapsulates her journey till now. Shruti, can you just play the video, please?
To work hard and achieve greatness, yet it's an absolute game changer when it's serendipity. Well, that's certainly the case with the next panelist. Her modeling career took off after being discovered in her teens, and the rest is history. She became one of India's top supermodels and was the face of Lakme and Bombay Dyeing. Subsequently, she became the most sought-after name in the modeling world by brands such as L'Oreal, De Beers, and MasterCard, and successfully graced the covers of many magazines. A Times of India poll named her the 9th most beautiful woman of the millennium. She didn't just limit herself to modeling, but has worked on numerous films and television shows, such as the Oscar-nominated film Water, The World Unseen, All Hat, Murdoch Mysteries, and Four More Shots, Please, to name a few. In 2009, she was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer, but won the battle, once again embracing life with positivity, and decided to pen down her experience in her best memoir, Close to the Bone. Her latest venture is being a co-founder of her startup, The Upside Space, where art meets new age technology. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you actress, model, author, public speaker, and wellness advocate, Lisa Ray.
So there you are. I think it was a beautiful video that kind of gave us all a quick preview on an illustrious career that Lisa Ray has had. I think one thing that stands out to me personally is that she embodied the word supermodel before it was a thing that was as common as it is today. Her impact on fashion and on the fashion and entertainment industries and on society is undeniable. And what's also great, and what is the topic today, what we are trying to do today, is to bring to you her life experiences, where she's been trying to raise awareness, inspire others, across all walks of life, and leave a lasting impact. With this, Lisa, I would like to formally welcome you to Pluxee Select.
Thank you so much, Harish. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. And I was so enthusiastic. Obviously, I turned on my video prematurely, but here I am again. I'm very, very excited to be in discussion with you on all manner of life experiences, of how to lead a life that is close to the bone, which is, of course, the name of the book that I wrote and represents to me a life that is about adventure, curiosity, and really trying to get to the root of who we are and why we're alive.
So the format for today, for the benefit of our audiences, is that I'll be asking a few questions first, Lisa, which will allow us again to have a peek at different aspects of her life and career. As she said it herself, she has written this beautiful, very candid book, Close to the Bone. So for those of you who like reading books, we would strongly recommend for you to go and grab a copy of it. So the first part of this, the Q&A, we'll keep around 40 to 45 minutes. Post that, any questions that you have, please post it in the Q&A section on the platform. And at the end of it, we will be posing some of those questions which we would not have addressed through our discussion with Lisa. And we'll post it to her, and you can hear her address them firsthand. Lisa, does this sound good?
Sounds fantastic. Let's get into it. And of course, again, I love questions. I love engaging with everybody's opinions and hearing from you. But I think we're going to cover a lot of territory as well. So take it away, Harish. Let's start.
Thank you. So, Lisa, of course, we've seen you as a famous personality, walk the ramp, be the face of so many globally renowned brands. But first, probably starting with your childhood experiences, you have lived across cities, and of course, these represent a melange of values, etc. So, how has your upbringing shaped, your values, your journey, and your outlook on life?
Well, that it's such an interesting question because, of course, it's important to always reflect back. The person that I am today is built on the shoulders of who I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and as a child. And, I'm 52, so I have a couple of decades under my belt. And having said that, for our younger audience out there, I want to share that it was a very different world when I was born in 1972. There was definitely a lot more innocence and a lot less exposure. And it had its own charm, of course. But, I was born of mixed origins. So my father's Bengali, and a very proud Bengali, which he's passed on to me. My mother's of Polish origin. They actually met in the UK and ended up moving to Canada, where they started their family, which consisted of only me. And the reason I bring that up is because I was brought up with a great appreciation of my background. I traveled to India every 2 years, to Kolkata. It was Calcutta back then. And also used to eat a lot of Polish food at home and spoke Polish with my grandmother. But this was a period of time when there were not that many racially mixed marriages. And I actually didn't have a lot of, let's say, mentors or people to look up to like me, that I felt, oh, this person understands me. They're similar to me. They've walked far ahead of me, but I can actually look at their life as a map for my own life. I didn't know anyone like that when I was young. And to be honest, I had a lot of identity issues because, when I was in India, perhaps I wasn't Indian enough, as much as I loved Calcutta. In Canada, I didn't feel that I fit in. So in a sense, that laid maybe a particular question inside me as to where do I belong and what is the meaning of belonging. Now, I was also born very restless. And as a young child, I, right from the beginning, decided that my life's path, whatever it may be that I would become, because that was actually irrelevant to me. It wasn't important that I become a doctor or maybe a researcher like my father, or a chef like my mother. It wasn't about the profession. It was about treating life like a great journey and an adventure, like a movable feast, as Ernest Hemingway has written about in his book, which is called A Movable Feast. I wanted to be able to experience a lot. And I wanted to travel as widely as possible. And today, travel is so accessible to so many people. But back when I was young, it simply wasn't as accessible. Even traveling to India was quite a task in those days, you might say. But at some point, I also set my heart and my vision on moving to India. And I was very, very young. But I think I was practicing early manifestation before there was such a word for such a thing. But my upbringing was very rich, I would say. It was very loving. It was very diverse in a period of time when there wasn't a lot of diversity. And it sowed within me the seeds of acceptance and open-mindedness as well. I also have to say that my parents, they had to rebel against their cultures in order to come together. My father's family initially didn't approve of my mother. My mother's family didn't approve of my father. They were so far apart culturally, and yet love is what brought them together. So both of my parents had to actually disconnect themselves from their countries and their culture and build another life in another country, and that became Canada initially. And that wasn't easy also, but it also taught me the value of, I think, really setting your sights on something, understanding what is important for you, and tuning out, you might say, all the noise of the world, all the opinions of the world. My parents were the original rebels. By the time I came along, both families, I think, had reconciled. And so, as I said, my mother's family was embraced by my father's quite conservative Bengali family in Shambazar in Calcutta. And she would wear saris and she loved going to India. So that by default became my major cultural influence. Also, of course, we used to watch Bollywood films, but those were the days of pirated DVDs and Mithun Chakrabarti and, things like that. But I also, as I said, in terms of a profession, what I had decided, because I was an introvert, and I still am an introvert, and I can explain that to you, even though I may not appear to be an introvert. Because I was so deeply introverted, and because I actually enjoyed my solitary time and very sensitive, I was trying to discover a profession where I would have the least possible human contact. So fancy that. I entered an industry where you have the maximum amount of human contact and you reach out to so many people. And I can't help but feel it's sort of been destiny. Because given my personality and given my own choice, I definitely wouldn't have become a model or an actor or a public personality. So life is really remarkable. However, at some point, we were in Mumbai for a period of time, because we always enjoyed our stopovers in Bombay. That's what it was called in 1990. And I was very young. I was just hardly 16 years old, and we were hanging out by the Holiday Inn in Juhu. And someone literally came up to my parents and said, "Is that your daughter?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Is she interested in modeling?" And those were the days also where this entire entertainment industry that is so huge today and overwhelming culturally was still quite chotu. It was just the foundation was just being built, especially when it came to modeling. I had never thought of modeling. I mean, the idea slightly horrified me, but I was also a 16-year-old girl, so I was curious. And as I said, curiosity is my middle name, or should be my middle name. So my parents were strangely supportive and trusting of me. So they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'm curious. Let me give it a go." So I went across and met a woman called Maureen Wadia, who was very iconic in those days in Mumbai. She was married to Nusli Wadia, and they, of course, owned Bombay Dyeing and many other concerns. And I went across to her house to meet her. And while en route, while I was walking up her very long driveway, one of her Rottweilers actually jumped up and bit me on the bum. So what that ended up doing is making it what I thought was a very inauspicious meeting. I was screaming. She was horrified. She came running down to rescue me. Fortunately, no skin was broken. And I thought that's the end of that. I thought this is going to be a funny story. I'm going to tell all my friends back in Canada, and I went away. But 2 days later, she called me up and she said, "I would really like you to come and do some photographs for me. And here's the photographer and the studio, and please show up on this day and that time." And I did. And so from this very shy, introverted girl, after sitting and having that 1.5 hours of makeup and somebody zipped me up into a cat suit, something happened. There was a strange alchemy that happened. And I felt that, I had stepped into somebody else's life. It was like playing a role. It was my earliest form of acting, you might say, because I became ultra confident. I enjoyed being in front of the camera. I enjoyed interacting with the photographer. And this was also a side of life, you might say, an industry and a side of India that I'd never seen or experienced. I didn't even imagine that existed, this glamour industry. And very soon after that, I got pulled in. However, very soon after that, after taking many photographs for Maureen in many different avatars, including in those days, a very scandalous bathing suit, which today nobody would blink an eye, but in those days, nobody did it. It was all about context. After doing a lot of that and enjoying myself, I went back to Canada to begin university. But literally 2 weeks before that, my family and I were involved in a very serious car accident. And as a direct result of that, my mother was paralyzed, which was very traumatic for myself. I couldn't attend university. And serendipity, sheer coincidence, again, destiny took over. Because while all this was going on in Canada on one side of the world, on the other side of the world, my images were released on the cover of a magazine called Glad Rags, and I became an overnight sensation in India. And it was a very different world, and it was a different India. And you have to, again, imagine a time before social media when all you saw was that image. And there was a lot of mystery around who I was, but it definitely had a very big impact. So while I was going through this extremely troubling, turbulent personal time, I suddenly became a star overnight in India. So it was a very, very peculiar life experience. And I can't help but think that life often presents these moments, these kind of forks in the road where you have to take a choice to either go this way or that. And what ended up happening, to make a long story short, is Maureen ended up actually flying to Canada, convincing my parents to send me back to India, that she would be my guardian, and that, it would be good for me mentally to separate myself from the situation while my mother was recovering, because she was in full recovery, fortunately, and to start modeling and just have fun with it and then go back to Canada and continue with a very different life. But that other life in Canada never materialized, and my life in India took over. So I think that what's interesting when I reflect back is so much of my life, I feel, has been marked by coincidence or serendipity or fate. And I didn't understand it when I was younger. And I think today it's not so much about understanding. I'm not necessarily someone who is a fan of having to rationalize everything that happens in our life. I believe that life is tinged with mystery, and there are things that we will never completely grasp. And that's why we have spiritual practice. That's why we have God and these ideas of a bigger force. So I'll never completely understand it, but I accept it. And today I accept all of the peculiar roads and twists in the road that have been thrown to me. And I think it's really enriched my life. And I'm glad that I took the decision often to take the road less traveled by.
Quite.
I thought I'll reach for another question because
No,
I'm
quite.
going on and on.
It was quite a journey, and I was just trying to imagine a few of these things you were saying, and how probably fate has played.
And in its context as well, Harish, because 1991 India was so radically different. The world was so different. I mean, just as an example, though, I started getting film offers on the basis of my magazine covers. Movie producers were trying to track me down in Canada. But remember one thing, how would you know that you were famous on the other side of the world in 1991? Because there was no social media, there was no WhatsApp, there was very little news that would cross, so many miles. So unless somebody picked up a phone and called you. So we used to get these phone calls at 3 and 4 a.m. when my mother was in ICU, and it would be very alarming because the first thing your mind would think about was, my God, I hope Mama's okay. And I'd run down because I had to go and pick up the phone that was stuck to the wall. And it's quite amusing because I explain this to my daughters today as well, who are only 6 years old. And they say, Mama, we don't believe you. A phone that's stuck to the wall, we don't believe you. So I'd go and pick up the phone, and I would hear India in the background, and I would hear somebody is like, hello, Lisa Ray, kahan hai Lisa Ray? And literally all the top Bollywood producers of that time were trying to track me down. It was absolutely surreal. But a very, very different, less connected world than we live in today, which in a strange way opens the human experience up to a lot more adventure, I have to say, and a lot more curiosity and a lot more mystery. Mystery is the one thing that I actually believe in the world. I don't think that every single thing in our life should be demystified.
As you were speaking, I realized that, as you said, that of course, given that the state at that time, you had no one to look up to in terms of being a role model because of your unique life situation. But of course, what kept coming back to me is how you have been such an inspiration for so many people across all the walks of life, that you've been there. It's a different day and age we live in.
I mean, I'm very honored you say that. I think of myself really just as a human being having a human experience with a spirit and a soul. And it wasn't honestly, Harish, until, ironically, and I don't want to be like necessarily jumping way ahead of myself, but I do think it's very worthwhile to, we're speaking also about health and wellness. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer, ironically, that I think I found my true purpose in life. I was always a little confused as a young woman because I felt I had something to say. I wasn't enamored of the glamour business, let me put that out there. I stumbled in it. And that's why I took some time to explain my story, because it wasn't like today where I think a lot of young stars are groomed and they work really hard and they know exactly what they want and where they want to go. I was nothing like that. I stumbled into the industry. It was literally, I call myself an accidental actress, and it's not a cute thing to say, it's true. But I also felt that I knew that I had a lot more to give and say in this particular lifetime. And I was searching for a long time when I was younger because I was also labeled. I mean, obviously, it's one thing to be called a sex symbol or a glamour goddess. And today at 52, I'll take it. I'm very different. But when you're young and you don't know who you are, and you just know that there are many other things you want people to take you seriously, I felt that it was a stigma for me. And it was a label that I couldn't shake off in India. And in those days, people didn't take you seriously if you were called a sex symbol. And I knew, you know, I collected art. I was already writing. I'm very, in my mind, and I'm not tooting my horn, but I'm a quick learner. Like, I'm a self-taught person. And I had a lot of other passions. And, you know, I always thought about social justice even before it was a popular thing to do. It would make me very unpopular at social gatherings, believe me, when I would literally step on the table and say, what are we doing to improve Mumbai or Bombay? And people would like look away. So I always had that fire in me to do more. And ironically, I mean, I did start to express myself through my movie choices. And some people understood that and some people didn't. Some people maybe thought I was foolish for refusing to do a lot of more mainstream stuff. But I had to, by that time, by my early 30s, I had started to understand who I was and what I wanted to do. And I was recovering from also anorexia. I was recovering from an eating disorder. I was recovering from low self-esteem. I was very, very, very insecure in my 20s. My 20s I was a mess. And that's the irony. That was the height of my fame. So it forced me to redefine success as well. And I thought success is going to be when I take my professional life and I'm able to take my personal values and the things I want to say and do and express them, or at least have them be aligned, not on literally two opposite ends of the pole, which is what was happening in my early 20s. So by the time I got to my 30s, I left India. I lived all over Europe. I studied a lot. I studied poetry. I studied writing. I studied performance formally, as in theater performance. I studied so many things, which is all the things that I'd wanted to do had built up inside in my 20s. And I went to Europe and England and I was doing that, which meant I gave up my fame and my status. And it was very freeing, so I could discover who I was and what I wanted to say. So by that time, I was expressing myself that way, but it wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer that I understood the power of vulnerability and the power, and that I finally, somewhere it made sense to me. I said, oh my God, maybe this is why when I was 16, I was discovered, because I have a platform. I've been diagnosed with this very serious disease, and now I can use this platform perhaps to help others. Although initially I was only just helping myself.
Sorry, I can see a lot of questions already, you know.
Yes.
But
would you like to take a few?
I think we'll get there, because I just want to ask you one question before we move to the next phase.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
the way
sure.
you structured your
Yes.
conversation, it's made it way more interesting than any question I could have asked. But just sticking to your modeling and acting career, of course, there was serendipity and there was other circumstances that brought you into it. But these are incredibly, tough things to do. This is hard work, especially as you say it yourself, in a day and age when there was no formal guidance to, in how to do things. So any tips for those who are young professionals from there that you followed as a young actress or a model? Because I'm sure you did a lot of hard work, and there was this routine you followed to be able to have that sort of success for a sustained period.
Well, Harish, to be completely honest, and this is perhaps not the popular thing to say or do, because it was a serendipitous accidental career for me. I would work hard, but I would get burned out. And I also, as I mentioned, I was struggling with an eating disorder where I would get painfully thin. And in fact, society rewarded me, entertainment rewarded me for being thin. So it laid the foundation of me understanding how unhealthy it is to listen to outside voices, because I had lost my inner voice. And it took me some time to heal from that. So I think it's an industry where we all acknowledge, and I think we know a lot more about it. It's less opaque than it was when I was young. You have to work really hard, and there's no formula. You know, if you want to be an accountant, there's sort of a formula. You go to a school and you get training, and you know, you work hard for a number of years, and you're pretty much guaranteed that you'll be successful. But that's not the case at all with the entertainment industry. And I would say honestly that Kismet plays some part. There's many, many, many very talented people. So I often tell young people, the first thing I say is, why do you want to do it? Why do you want to be an actor or a famous personality? And it's not good enough to just say famous and I want to make money, because believe me, there's a lot of easier ways to make money today. I would say understand your why. Number one, is it because you have something to say in the world? And also visualize yourself. Okay, I've made it. Now what do I do? Who am I going to be, and how am I going to make the world better? I think if you don't ask yourself those questions, and if you don't give yourself answers that are honest to yourself, not to anyone else, bother. It's too hard today to make it work in this industry, and there's too much competition. And still, if you've answered those questions and you're really passionate about acting, because look, it's not good enough to be passionate about acting today. Many very, very, very talented actors, trained actors, unlike when I started. And if you only love acting, then you can be doing theater, right? You can sustain yourself like that. So I think you have to have a very, very serious plan, both a practical plan and ask yourself, your inner self, those tough questions. Why am I doing this? Because they often say this about children. I'll tell you where I'm going with this. Like they say, and I took this very seriously, before you have children, work on yourself. Because we all have these toxic habits and patterns that we're carrying. And you don't want to pass that on to your children. Like my father used to put a lot, this is not literally me, but I'm giving you an example. If your father put a lot of pressure on you to succeed academically, and it made you miserable, but very successful, for your children, you have to be careful. I mean, you don't want to just pass on this lineage. You want to encourage your child to find their own voice, to be who they need to be. Because today, you don't need to necessarily be academically successful to do very well. There's so many other options. You become a founder, an entrepreneur. You can become an influencer. You can become so many other things. So the world has changed. So I always say, before becoming a parent, go see a therapist and understand yourself. And it's the same thing. Before you choose your profession, especially acting, do some work on yourself. Otherwise, you're taking a lot of your traumas and unresolved issues into a really deadly hard profession that is going to trigger your insecurities. And that doesn't end well for a lot of people. So, but listen, if you still want to go ahead with it, I wish you all the best, and I hope you're a huge success. And the industry has come very far today. At least I'm very, very happy with the opportunities being offered on OTT platforms and the content that's being written for women. I think it's an excellent time to be a woman in the industry today, as long as you have a strong foundation, emotional support, and you know who you are.
Thank you. I think there are a few questions, and I know you are also very passionate about this topic. So moving little down the road regarding time when you were diagnosed, with multiple myeloma. Of course, you spoke about how you connected the dots later on to understand how you can put your, all that fame and in your career. But how you just, and I see a few questions on that. So how did the initial phase, change your perspective towards life, your career, your family? Some reflections that can help, those listening to you today, to get
You're getting diagnosed with cancer?
yes. Initially,
Yeah. Well, when it's definitely a word that you never want to hear, obviously, that you have cancer. You have, in my case, you have multiple myeloma, which is a very rare cancer and considered fatal and incurable. So I am not cured. I'm still on medication. Those are words that nobody wants to hear. However, I did understand when I was diagnosed a few things all at once. Number one, I think due to my years of meditation and yoga, which sometimes I would think, why am I doing this? Is anything happening? I believe that due to that, there was some inner strength that was triggered, it was activated, so that I didn't completely fall apart or fall into despair. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think that, again, I'm a believer in expressing emotions, not tamping them down. So I also don't believe that you have to appear strong when you're not feeling it. There's nothing wrong with vulnerability, with expressing your emotions when you've had a horrible diagnosis, with breaking down and crying. That's good, because I also believe there's a connection between repressed emotions and cancer and diseases in the body. There is a mind-body connection. So let's be clear about that. I was resilient, not strong in the sense that I was putting all of my emotions down. I cried a lot. But I also understood suddenly, this is the moment where I can change my life, where I can make really positive changes that I had been moving towards for a lot of my life. But you know what? We're creatures of habit. We get very lazy as human beings. Changing your patterns is very hard for us until you have that really, really strong message. I've been getting strong messages. I've been ignoring my body. And that also put me in a very vulnerable situation. It was like, no, it's okay. I can manage. I used to get very fatigued. Some of my symptoms were extreme fatigue. I didn't have any bone lesions or bone breakage leading up to my multiple myeloma diagnosis, which is also very common. But I was also diagnosed at 37, where most people are diagnosed in their 60s. So I had extreme fatigue. So what would I do? I would drink more coffee. I would cut out rice from my diet. I did everything except go and get a blood test. I was so much in denial because from my profession, and here I'm going to try to, again, connect some dots. I was trained from a young age, being in studios and just working really hard and ignoring my body. If I had a fever, the doctor would come to the set and give me some goal and, give me a injection, and I would continue working. And everyone would say, "Vah, look at her, she's so amazing, she's so strong." I say that is so terrible and toxic, because it taught me and put me in the habit and conditioned me to ignore my body. Don't ignore your body ever. You ignore at your peril. So my body had been sending me signals, extreme fatigue. I ignored, and I thought, oh, I'm jet lagged, I'm this, I'm that. I made up excuses from my mind. So your body often will send you these messages. Hello, hello. You'll keep knocking. Finally, I had to break down the door because I was ignoring the messages. And that was the final diagnosis of a serious blood cancer. But I understood that I have this opportunity to completely rechange my life now, which is what I wanted to do. I knew it was not going to be easy, but I tuned into this inner voice, and I had such faith deep inside that this is part of your journey. Remember how I explained that I thought life is this journey of experiences, one more experience to have. This is not the end. It's not going to be easy, but this is not the end. And then really I had to dig deep to find that resilience, to find that faith. I also turned towards writing, which has always been a love of mine. And I finally shared my writing publicly in order to process what I was going through. And it led me to writing my book. So many great things came out of cancer, not that I wish it on anyone. My father was my emotional support during that time. And my first reaction was to withdraw, was to hide and not say anything to anyone. And then again, life pushed me into the situation where I was absorbing the idea that, oh my God, okay, this cancer is incurable. And my doctor flat out told me you have about 5 years to live. The first doctor. So you know what I did? I found another doctor who said, listen, we're going to fight this. I believe in you. Trust me. And you're going to get through this and you're going to be thriving. And that's another message that I want to share with people. Don't let somebody else write your story. Be a little stubborn about these things. You don't have to trust everything that one doctor says. Plus, we are not data points. We are human beings. And let's go back to this idea that we are mysterious, that mysterious things can happen. Not necessarily, I mean, science can't necessarily predict every single thing that will happen to you. So I dug in my heels. I became very stubborn. I went through my treatment. I was in Canada at that moment because, ironically, my mom had passed away 6 months before that. Otherwise, I would not have been in Canada. And I'm very grateful to all the support I got. But when I decided to go public is when I was told that, you know, I had done 2 independent films and they were premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival. So normally that's something to celebrate. But I was about a month or a month and a half into my treatment. And treatment for multiple myeloma involves very heavy steroids. Every single cancer, you know, I mean, first, I'm sure many of you know this, but cancer is not one broad disease. Cancer is so many diverse diseases. And each one has its own prognosis, has its own diagnosis, has its own treatment that is completely different from the next cancer. So with multiple myeloma, one of my treatments was very heavy steroids. And it was relatively light on the chemo. But with those steroids, I ended up gaining 40 pounds and bloating up beyond recognition. So now imagine my state. So here we are. I have this offer to be on the red carpet. I'm a month and a half on treatment for a very serious disease that I haven't told anyone about. So what do you do? What do you do? The universe, again, put this interesting kind of 2 decisions, because either I could just hide and say, sorry, I can't do this, you know, I'm busy. Or I could actually go on the red carpet and I could use that moment to talk about my cancer, to announce my cancer publicly, to get more attention for multiple myeloma and increase research and funding, and also to get this off my chest. I didn't like this feeling of hiding, and I kept asking myself, why am I hiding? Why should I be ashamed of having cancer? And this is a problem, obviously, in our culture, that often we tend to want to hide or bury difficult things and difficult diagnoses. And even, you know, I had an agent at that time, and even she said, listen, don't talk to anyone about it. And that part of me said, I'm going to announce it publicly. And it was so freeing. It was one of the most memorable things that I've ever done personally, because 40 pounds overweight on the red carpet, I was not self-conscious. But I also remember going back to that young girl who had so much to say, but was labeled and couldn't find her voice. I stood there on the red carpet and I said, I have been diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and here's what I'm going through. And I started writing my blog. So you see, I took this very glamorous moment and I managed to hijack it and speak about something that I felt was so purposeful and would help other people, but also help me. Let me make it very clear. I'm not brave, because by announcing my diagnosis, I received the support from so many people that I needed. And I honestly believe that's one of the reasons why I'm here today.
Thanks. I think you answered a few questions just so that, you know, this was a question we wanted. Ashok, you asked this question of how of Lisa, of how she handled the situation, and there is another question by Nagesh, and Lisa, just for your information, he says that he has a family member who's suffering from lung cancer and getting treated at the Tata Memorial Hospital. And I think it kind of touches a little bit of what I wanted to ask you next, which is the other side of the equation, as someone who's suffering. So what is the role, or what can friends, family, or, even community groups do to someone who's coping with this decision, and what sort of role do they play?
It's it's a hard time for caregivers, for your friends and your family, for sure. But I wanted to address something else also from this question, which was, can you share a few tips to help us sail through treatment, and does having sound monetary status help us to overcome? So let us also be clear that, cancer is also very expensive and ruinous for some families. And fortunately, today in India, we have health insurance. And I actually didn't have health insurance when I was diagnosed, in which case it would have been very difficult for me. Although in Canada, we have public health care, but still there's a lot of other extra costs that add up very quickly. So I was insured through my actors union at that time. They covered a lot of the costs. So I think that today, part of smart planning, part of being ready for anything, part of having a fearless heart means making sure that you have some savings for a rainy day, and also health insurance, getting adequate health insurance. And I advocate that to everyone. And that is within everyone's reach. Plus, let us also not deny the fact that there are quite a few support groups in India that I have come across that do incredible work in terms of supporting the families and also supporting families monetarily. And it's about putting together, an excellent kind of, let's say, resource. I wish that there was a resource online. That's something that should be done. If diagnosed with cancer in this state, in this, in this city, here's the group that you can reach out to, either for emotional support or for financial support. There's a wonderful NGO that also offers amazing support for child cancer as well. I think it's called Cancer Cares. I've actually done an event for them in Singapore, and I'll just look that up and put that out there. And they will cover 100% of the cost across India. And also they require ongoing funds. But I think that, look, we don't wish for these things to happen. And I am an optimist, you may have gathered in life. But I think we should always be prepared. That's what cancer has taught me. I was not prepared. I was caught on the back foot, and it's just by coincidence that I managed to use, I didn't know I was a part of an actors union, and I had health insurance, and that helped a lot. So I do advocate for that all the time, but also have faith. I think in terms of giving advice, I'm not very good at giving advice. My journey is my journey, and everyone is so different. But I often find personally, I can only share what I went through and what my experience was like. And I found that often what would help the most would be a friend who would come over and just sit with me and not even say, ask me any questions. Just say, hey, you want to watch a film? Let's watch a film. Let's talk about someone. Let's gossip about someone. Let's, like sometimes you actually just want to feel a little normal. That was my experience. Or sometimes you don't have the energy to talk, but you just want someone to sit with you. It's called Can Kids. Can Kids, Kids Can. It's a very, very, very good, it's a National Society for Change for Childhood Cancer. I recommend them because I've worked with them personally and I know the founders behind them. They're very sincere and motivated. But I think often what you'll hear that cancer patients don't want is a lot of extra advice. They don't want every single advice or cure, go to this Baba or do this or do that. Not when you're in the middle of treatment. there's phases to cancer. There's the initial diagnosis when, to be honest, you're in survival mode and you're in shock, and there's that phase. Then there's the phase of treatment, and that's when often the patient themselves really just needs support. Like maybe you need khana for sure. Somebody can drop by and bring some good khana, can bring a nice movie, can bring, a nice book or something to do. But you don't have a lot of energy to give yourself anywhere else, to even sometimes some days chat, unless you're a chatty person. So I'm speaking from my own experience. Then there's another phase that people don't talk about. That's the actual healing. Once you finish your treatment and you're out of the hospital, then what? That's often when you're left on your own. For me, that's when my real healing started. Emotionally, I had a lot of breakdowns then, and I understood what I had to heal within myself. I went immediately, against my doctor's orders, back to India, was with my friends in Goa, and just that's where I started feeling normal, like myself, started eating, started enjoying life again, and being optimistic again. But that's when you can start what I call complementary therapies, whether it's Ayurveda, naturopathy, homeopathy. Look, I'm a big believer in not one at the exclusion of the other. I have benefited a lot from the allopathic treatment. I have benefited a lot from the complementary, alternative, however you want to classify a treatment. I don't believe in one at the expense of the other. And I've gone to fantastic healing retreats. Like I just came back from one called Prakriti Shakti, beautiful naturopathic retreat. It's actually it's a naturopathic hospital. It's an accredited hospital in the mountains of Kerala, where you have accredited doctors who take all of your vitals and understand. They curate a specific treatment for you to support your healing. The healing process is ongoing. It's for the rest of your life. So even 2-3 years after the cancer has disappeared, hopefully, touch wood, hopefully you will have taken this experience as a lesson to say, what do I need to change in my life? How am I going to make my life better? How am I going to make sure this doesn't happen again? And that involves the mind, because again, it's a mind-body connection, the emotions, being able to release emotions, and body. By that, I mean nutrition, exercise, by mind also, and spirit. Mind, I include spirit. That means meditation, faith, and all of these practices. And you find something hopefully that works for you, so that you can actually step into this life and say, this is a lovely line that I actually wanted to use for the title of my book, but I didn't, and I'll tell you where it comes from. I am more beautiful for having been broken. And it comes from the Japanese tradition of kintokusuroi, which is the Japanese, when they have a beautiful ceramic and it breaks, a vase, say, what do? Normally we throw it out, or we say, it's broken, now it's done. Or we try to repair it so it looks like there's no cracks. What the Japanese do is they take this broken vase and they line the cracks with gold so you can see where it's broken, and the objects becomes more beautiful. It's wabi-sabi. We are imperfect, so we remember our scars and we celebrate them, and it makes us even more beautiful as human beings.
Thank you. There were a few questions that I was not going to ask you, which the audience had posed, but that's and I think the uniqueness of Leader Ray, the personality that you are, so open and sharing, including on the financial aspects. A few people had questions, so I think she touched upon that and the importance of being prepared in advance. So
yeah, at some point I would love to also, Harish, somebody's asked about my personal health and wellness routine. I would be more than happy to share that as well.
I think we can move to that part, but I think I would be remiss if I don't ask you,
of course,
a personal question on any guilty pleasures that you have, that you know, because I think this is also part of
yes, joy. Life is joy. The fact that I wake up every morning when I shouldn't have means that I'm so full of gratitude and joy. I have tons of guilty pleasures, but depends on what's your guilt, what's your poison, they say. Um, I mean, I love watching films. Me and my husband, that's how we get a break from our kids. Um, for me, travel, still exploring the world, guilty pleasure. One day a week, I eat whatever I want. So for me, it's dosa, pizza, mm, lots of yummy things. I love food. I'm a complete foodie. But you know what's happened is I have changed my diet. So what ends up happening when you change your diet radically and it becomes clean eating, non-inflammatory diet, is your cravings actually change. So I used to crave a lot of sweets. Sugar and cancer do not go together. And it's hard as a Bengali. My father has such a sweet tooth. Mishti, mishti, mishti. There's always sweets at home. It's challenging. But so what I do is I bake my own sweets. I make my own sweets and I use coconut sugar and I use like honey and I use less stuff. And it's become a beautiful routine that I share with my kids now. But guilty pleasure. Sometimes I tell my family that I have to go to a meeting and I just go to a mall. Because we all need space. We all need space, right? And my children are 6 years old, and bless them. Hi, God bless them. They're beautiful, but every mother needs a break and a rest. So a lot of my guilty pleasures are around taking rests and breaks and trying to not hurt anyone's feelings while I'm doing it right now.
Thank you for sharing that very personal, note of your life. So I think I'm just mindful of the time that we have, around 5 minutes. I think the question that you wanted to share more about your personal health regimen, I think you can touch upon that. And as part of your answer, if there are any top learnings today, having experienced so much in your life that you'd like to share, it would be great to hear.
So somebody had asked about sort of a daily routine, and I thought that might be useful, though there's so many very good questions and I wish I could answer them all. For instance, what can we reduce stress? And that goes together with the daily routine, I think. There's one very important one I want to address very quickly. After you recovered, has there been any discrimination that you cannot perform at work because of cancer? Yes, I have gone through discrimination, particularly abroad, because I was working actually in films abroad when I was diagnosed. And in order to work in a film abroad, you have to be insured. You have to go through a health insurance and a health check. And actually, I was excluded from a lot of work because of that. And I wrote about it. And it was very frustrating, but somehow I found another way around it. And I think we have to raise our voices around this particular issue as well. With social media today, you yourself can start a movement. Remember, your voice counts, and we can all start a movement. It's all within our hands. But in terms of today, my routine, I would say that there's a couple of essentials. First is working on my mind. Everything starts with the mind. Everything. My mind and my soul. So I have a spiritual teacher and I sit and I do my own sadhana, but my sadhana is not necessarily to a particular god or goddess or anything like that. My sadhana is to my higher self, our spirit, who can guide you. And ultimately, I think all religious and spiritual practice should lead you back to yourself so that you become your own guide. So I do things to connect. I'm somebody that gets very spaced out if I'm in big crowds or if I'm walking too quickly. So I check myself every day. Am I present? I know my habits. If I walk too fast, it means I'm spacing out. I'm not present. If I'm eating too fast. So I bring myself back to my breath. I do pranayam. I do visualizations and meditation every morning. Then I go to the gym. So that takes care of the mind. And I also do affirmations. I have a beautiful affirmation around a healthy body, to be disease-free. You speak to your own cells. All of this is available to us, and there's a lot of fantastic material online. Sometimes I try to post some of this on my Instagram page as well. But you have to find what works for you. Then, so the mind, also spending time with my family, joking around, making sure to prioritize good family time and slowing down. A walk does me a wonder when I'm feeling at the end of the day when I need to unwind, playing with my kids, playing with my doggy, hanging out with my husband at the end of the day. Super important. Body, as a 52-year-old woman, I think that lifting weights is essential. You should start in your 40s. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around weights in women, lifting in women. Take it out of your mind, go to the gym, lift whatever you can. We need to build our muscles and our bones through that. Absolutely essential. I also do yoga. Um, I try to maintain a really happy, positive attitude. But if I'm feeling overwhelmed, you know what I do? I go back to my room. I shut the door. I lock the door because, again, children, they don't have any boundaries. And I cry. Or I just sit with myself and I say, what's going on inside? What do I have to release? I don't have to know what it's about, but I need to release the emotions. I've learned the hard way how dangerous it is to hang on to your emotions. So don't do that. And I have redefined success for myself. So success is not necessarily achieving this much in my professional life. If I can improve people's lives, if I can align my professional life, like Four More Shots, Please was a great alignment because I was playing a character that I thought was really out of the box. And I was really proud of that. So that's me being in alignment. I say no to a lot of projects today because my family is also my priority and my health is my priority. And it has to really speak to me. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. And I also think that faith, cultivating that faith in whatever is happening for your highest good, saying it to yourself again and again, and having a great emotional support system, nothing like it. You're going to breeze through life no matter what life throws to you. And please remember one other thing. We should never say, why me? Because if you say, why me, you have to look at your blessings and you also have to say, why me? So the question is, why not? If you are going through something difficult, perhaps there's a reason and you have to figure that out for yourself. It's not going to be easy, but by shifting your mindset and reframing it and saying, why not me? I can get through this. I can perhaps help others. I will be a better person. I will be a better mother, daughter, woman, friend after this, a better father, husband, human being after I get through this. Then why not?
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think a few of you who asked questions, I think through this answer, you also addressed them. Of Sandeep Mukherjee asked about how a person can come out of
somebody said something about sleep. Let me say one thing that I forgot to add. Sleep. Sleep is the biggest hack for your health. It's cheap, it's available, but it's the most underrated. Please make sure you get your sleep. Take magnesium, shut down your devices, whatever it takes. Lack of sleep is leading to, I think, an epidemic of health issues in India today in particular. We need to get the sleep, shut down, and prioritize your sleep. That's something I need to say.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that note. And as I was saying, people, I think Sanjeev Mukherjee, you asked about how can someone come out of an unconscious state of mind. I think we just spoke about that. There are a few other questions on managing your emotions, daily routine, etc. So I think overall,
managing, yeah, I hope so. And again, I want to emphasize again, managing your emotions is one of the most important life skills. We should be taught this in schools. Actually, we're not taught the proper life skills in schools. So we have ancient technology to help manage emotions, but you have to commit to it. Find also a guru, find a guide, if not in person, then online, and stick to it. I promise that managing, just remember one thing, emotions and thoughts are not real. They're like passing clouds in the sky. You are the sky. Some days you can't even see the sky because there's a storm. Those are your thoughts. Those are your emotions. You can choose your thoughts, you can choose your emotions, you can choose your belief. I know this to be true. Now figure out how to get there.
I think that's as good an ending note as we can have. Thanks a lot, Rita, for joining us today, giving us, I think a great flow. I've done a few, again, just on a personal note, I've done a few webinars, but I've not had one where it flew so naturally and also organically. So thank you for bringing out the best of this conversation. and it was an honor to have you.
Thank you.
Shruti,
Thank you so much, Harish. I really enjoyed this. You know, I could probably go on for another hour, but I really appreciate Pluxee for organizing this. I think it's a fantastic initiative. And, you know, we need to be able to share our stories, especially around health and wellness, and we make each other better. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. I really, really deeply appreciate it. I appreciate you. And know one thing, you have so much inside you. You have all the strength and all the power that you need in your life. You just have to be able to access it. So I wish everyone all the best of love as well, and luck and many blessings.
On behalf
Shruti, what do you?
On behalf of the entire Pluxee team, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for making this session a resounding success. A big thank you to you, Lisa, for spending your valuable time with us and with our audience. Thank you so much, Harish, for making this session as engaging as it was. And to all our viewers, thank you for joining us today. I hope and your active participation and thoughtful questions really enriched the entire webinar experience. We're delighted that, and we hope that you found this content, you found all that we shared today inspiring, Lisa's story inspiring, and we look forward to bringing you more such inspiring stories soon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lisa, again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.